My brother stole our family's fortune and called me a nobody. Now he's gone, and I'm honoring Mom's legacy. What started as cleaning out our childhood home has turned into something I can barely wrap my head around. Mom passed away 6 months ago, cancer. It was quick, too quick for any of us to really process it. The morning she passed, she called me to her bedside and squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Benjamin," she whispered. "Protect our legacy. The answers are in my study." At the time, I thought it was just the medication talking. My brother Thomas and I handled the funeral arrangements. Well, mostly I did. He kept making excuses about being too busy with important meetings to help choose the casket or write the eulogy. That should have been my first red flag, but grief has a way of making you overlook things. The real problem started last week. I was sorting through Mom's study, going through decades of family photos and documents, when I found her diary hidden behind a loose panel in her antique desk. As I flipped through it, my hands started shaking. The most recent entry was dated just 2 days before she passed. "Thomas came by again today. More demands. He thinks I don't know about the money he's been taking from the trust. My sweet foolish boy, always so focused on having more than everyone else, but I've prepared for this. Benjamin will understand when the time comes." I was still trying to process this when Thomas barged in waving some papers. "I'm selling the house," he announced, not even bothering with a hello. "I've already got a buyer lined up. They want to tear it down and build condos." "What, you can't just—" "Actually, I can. I'm the executor of the estate." He smirked, looking around the study with disdain. "You need to clear your stuff out by Friday. This is our childhood home," I protested. "Mom would never." "Mom's dead." He cut me off coldly. "And let's be honest, you're in no position to stop me. You're a nobody who doesn't deserve to exist in this family. Always following the rules, playing it safe, being Mom's perfect little boy. Well, guess what? That got you nowhere." I stood there, diary clutched behind my back, as he continued ranting about how he'd made something of himself while I was wasting my potential. But my mind was racing, connecting dots I should have seen months ago. The missing statements from the family trust. The way Mom had been systematically reorganizing her study in her final months. The strange conversations with our elderly neighbor Ivy about property lines and old deeds. "You need help," I said quietly when he finally ran out of steam. He laughed. "From you, please, I've got everything under control. Just get your worthless self out of my house." My house, actually, but he didn't know that yet. See, while he was busy belittling me, I'd spotted something interesting in the stack of papers he was holding. Property records, but not the originals. I could tell because Mom had shown me the real ones last year, complete with her distinctive notary seal in the corner. These were copies, and poorly done ones at that. I waited until he stormed out before pulling out my phone to call my friend Ezra. "Remember that conversation we had about Mom's estate planning?" I asked. "I think it's time to dig deeper." Looking back, I should have seen this coming. Thomas had always been the aggressive one, the one who thought rules didn't apply to him. When we were kids, he broke my arm and convinced our parents it was an accident. In college, he borrowed money for textbooks and bought a car instead. But this was different. The diary entries went back years. Mom had been watching, documenting, preparing. She knew exactly who Thomas was, and she'd put safeguards in place. I just had to find them. I spent the rest of the day going through her papers methodically. Tax records, property deeds, trust documents. With each folder, the picture became clearer. Remember, Mom hadn't been confused or medicated when she'd given me that final message. She'd been giving me a mission. That night, I got a text from Thomas: "Movers coming Thursday, whatever's left gets trashed." I texted back a simple "okay" and smiled for the first time in months. Let him think he's won. Let him play his games with his fake documents and big plans, because what he doesn't know, what Mom made sure of before she died, is that every property he thinks he controls actually belongs to me. The best part? He has no idea what's coming. I'm meeting with Ezra tomorrow to go over everything we've found. Mom left us a paper trail a mile wide, and Thomas's fraud isn't nearly as clever as he thinks it is. I'll update when I can, but I need to be careful. Thomas has always underestimated me. It's time to show him exactly what this nobody can do. Update 1 first. Thank you all for the supportive messages. A lot has happened in the past week, and I've been documenting everything meticulously. What I've discovered makes my head spin. The morning after my confrontation with Thomas, I met Ezra at a small coffee shop downtown. I brought Mom's diary and the files I'd found, spreading them across the table while my coffee went cold. Ezra's expression changed as he read through the entries. "Your mother," he said slowly, "was absolutely brilliant." He wasn't wrong. Mom hadn't just been keeping track of Thomas's schemes, she'd been 3 steps ahead of him the whole time. The diary detailed everything: Dates, amounts, account numbers, she'd even kept USB drives with scanned copies of all the original documents, hidden in different locations throughout the house. But the real bombshell came when our elderly neighbor Ivy stopped by my table. I hadn't even noticed her in the coffee shop. She placed a weathered envelope in front of me, her hands trembling slightly. "Your mother asked me to give you this if Thomas ever tried to sell the house," she said quietly. "We had tea every Sunday for the past 2 years. She told me everything." Inside the envelope was a letter and a key to a safety deposit box. The letter was short but clear. "My dearest Benjamin, if you're reading this, then Thomas has shown his true colors." The key opens box 247 at First National. "What you'll find there will protect our family's legacy from those who would destroy it for profit." I went to the bank that afternoon. The safety deposit box contained property deeds, trust documents, and a USB drive with video recordings. Mom had documented every conversation with Thomas where he'd pressured her about money or property. She'd even recorded him admitting to forging her signature on loan documents. But what truly floored me was finding Amelia's business card paperclipped to one of the files. Thomas's wife. On the back was a handwritten note from Mom. "She knows more than she lets on, trust her." I hesitated for days before calling the number. When I finally did, Amelia's voice was tense. "I've been waiting for your call," she said. "Can you meet me somewhere private? There's something you need to see." We met at a park the next day. Amelia looked exhausted, shadows under her eyes. She pulled out her phone, showing me texts from Thomas. He'd been trying to liquidate properties quickly, talking about moving money offshore. "He thinks I'm asleep when he makes these calls," she said, "but I've been recording everything. Your mother, she warned me this might happen." It turns out Mom had approached Amelia months before her death. She'd seen how Thomas treated his wife, recognized the same patterns of manipulation he'd used all his life. Amelia had been gathering evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment. "I'm not just doing this for you," she said, her voice steady. "I'm doing it for me, for your mother. For everyone he's ever tried to control." The pieces were falling into place. Mom's careful planning, Ivy's weekly tea sessions, Amelia's quiet documentation, it was all connected. Thomas had been so focused on bullying and intimidating everyone that he never noticed the network of support being built around us. Yesterday, Thomas tried to close a deal on one of the properties. The look on his face when the title company called him about irregularities in the documentation was apparently priceless. Amelia recorded his meltdown afterward, all that cool confidence crumbling as he realized something was wrong. He's been calling me nonstop since then, switching between threats and attempts at reconciliation. "Come on, little brother," he wheedled in his latest voicemail. "We can work something out. Families should stick together, right?" The same family he said I didn't deserve to be part of last week. I haven't responded to any of his messages. Instead, I've been working with Ezra to compile everything we've found. The illegal property transfers, the forged signatures, the embezzled trust funds, it's all documented. Mom made sure of that. This morning, I received an email from an account I didn't recognize. It contained one line: "Check the guest house floorboards, ZZ for Zoe, my mother's name." She must have set up this email to send automatically after her death. I'm heading there tonight after Thomas leaves for his business dinner. Amelia confirmed he'll be gone for at least 3 hours. I don't know what I'll find under those floorboards, but knowing Mom, it'll be something that changes everything. Again, I have to be careful about what I share right now, but I promise to update when I can. Thomas still thinks he's in control, still believes he's the smartest person in the room. He has no idea that Mom spent years building a case against him, that every move he makes now only strengthens our position. The property records he's been waving around, they're going to look very different once the originals come to light. Tomorrow, we start the legal process. Mom made sure I had everything I needed, I just had to be patient enough to find it all. To those who asked, yes, I'm documenting everything. Yes, I'm being careful. And no, I won't let Thomas talk his way out of this one, not anymore. The guest house awaits. Update 2. I've been staring at my computer screen for an hour trying to figure out how to write this update. What I found in the guest house changed everything, just not in the way I expected. The floorboards in the back bedroom came up easily. Inside was a metal lockbox containing a stack of letters written over the span of 20 years. They were from Thomas to Mom, starting from when he was in college. The first ones were normal enough, asking for money, making excuses about grades, but they grew increasingly hostile over time. I know about the offshore accounts. One letter from 2015 read, "Either you give me control or I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." That stopped me cold. What offshore accounts? My mother was the most transparent person I knew when it came to finances. She documented everything, kept meticulous records, unless I called Ezra immediately. Remember how we couldn't trace some of Thomas's money transfers? What if they weren't his transfers at all? 2 hours and several energy drinks later, we had our answer. The offshore accounts existed all right, but they weren't Mom's. They were grandfather's. He'd set them up years ago as a safety net for the family, but Thomas had somehow gained access. He'd been using them to hide money he'd stolen from the family trust, then trying to blackmail Mom with his own crimes. But Mom had known. Of course she had. The USB drive we found contained a folder labeled Insurance, complete records of every transaction, every threat, every manipulation attempt. She'd been building this case for years. I was still processing this when Amelia called. She was crying. Thomas knows, she said. He found the recordings on my phone. He's destroying everything in his office. I've never seen him like this. I told her to get somewhere safe and called our elderly neighbor Ivy. Within 20 minutes, Amelia was at Ivy's house, and we were copying all her evidence to secure storage. That's when things got really interesting. A group email went out to several family members from Thomas's account. It was clearly written in anger, accusations about me trying to steal his inheritance, claims about Mom being manipulated in her final days. But he made one crucial mistake. He copied someone named Marcus on the email. Nobody in our family knows a Marcus. Some quick searching revealed Marcus was Thomas's partner in several property deals. Deals that should have gone through the family trust but never did. More digging showed they'd been working together for years, artificially inflating property values and pocketing the difference. The family gathering last weekend was where it all came to a head. Thomas showed up unannounced, obviously drunk, waving printed emails and shouting about loyalty. Our cousin Sarah, who'd lost money in one of his schemes, finally snapped. "You want to talk about loyalty?" she yelled. "How about when you convinced me to invest my kid's college fund in that guaranteed return property deal, the one that mysteriously fell through after you and Marcus took your cut?" The room went silent. Thomas's face went from red to white. "You don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but Sarah wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone, playing a recording of Thomas and Marcus discussing how to restructure the investment to their benefit. "Mom gave me copies of everything," she said quietly. "She wanted us all protected from you." The display of family unity seemed to break something in Thomas. He started laughing, a weird hollow sound. "You think you're so clever, all of you," he sneered, playing detective with Mom's little breadcrumb trail. "But you have no idea what's really going on, no idea what she was capable of." He stormed out, but not before threatening to burn it all down if we didn't back off. Empty threats from a desperate man, I thought, until this morning. I woke up to dozens of notifications. Thomas had tried to transfer ownership of multiple properties overnight. When that failed, he attempted to take out massive loans against them. When that failed too, he did something truly desperate. He tried to report the properties as fraudulently obtained, hoping to trigger an investigation that would freeze everything. He didn't realize those reports would lead straight back to his own paper trail. Ezra's been working nonstop to contain the damage. Amelia's staying with Ivy, gathering more evidence from her years of living with Thomas. And I've just received another automated email from Mom's account. Guest house, second floor, behind the mirror. The combination is your birthday. I'm heading there now. Thomas's threats about burning it all down have me worried. Not about the properties, but about what he might do when he realizes just how thoroughly Mom outmaneuvered him. The difference between us, I learned from Mom's patience and planning. Thomas still thinks he can bully his way to victory. He's about to learn otherwise. Finally, update. The safe behind the mirror contained exactly one thing, a printed email thread between Mom and Thomas from 15 years ago. The subject line read, "Last chance." In it, Thomas had threatened to reveal something about Mom's past that would destroy everything. Her response was simple. "I've already told Benjamin everything, do your worst." He never replied, "Here's the thing. Mom never told me anything devastating about her past, but she knew Thomas would assume she had, and that knowledge had kept him in check for years. It was brilliant, and now I finally understood the game we were playing." The next morning, I had my assistant send an email to every member of the family trust. "Emergency meeting today, 2 p.m. Bring documentation of every interaction with Thomas." They came. All of them, even distant cousins who'd been quietly nursing their losses for years. Each person brought their own piece of the puzzle: promissory notes, verbal agreements, text messages. Thomas hadn't just been stealing from Mom, he'd been systematically bleeding the entire family dry. I laid out everything we discovered. The offshore accounts, the property schemes with Marcus, the forged documents. But I saved Mom's masterstroke for last. Remember how Thomas kept pushing to sell properties quickly? Turns out, he had buyers lined up through shell companies all connected to Marcus. They were planning to flip the properties for triple the price using insider information about upcoming development plans. But Mom had seen it coming. 3 years ago, she'd quietly added a clause to the trust. Any property sale had to be approved by a unanimous vote of all trust members. Thomas had been so busy playing his games that he never even read the amendment he'd signed. The family's reaction was everything I'd hoped for, but the real show was just beginning. While Thomas was busy threatening to burn everything down, I'd been working with Ezra to track every dollar he'd stolen. We found it all. Hidden accounts, fake businesses, even cryptocurrency wallets. Mom's documentation gave us everything we needed. Then I did something Thomas never expected. I offered him a deal. Meet me at the childhood home, I texted, 1 hour. Come alone, he showed up looking worse than I'd ever seen him. The expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion, the fear. Come to gloat, he spat. I handed him a folder. No, I came to give you a choice. Inside was a complete confession already typed up. If he signed it, admitted everything to the family, and returned every dollar he'd stolen, he'd keep his freedom. If not, well, the second document was a detailed criminal complaint ready to file. He laughed that hollow laugh again. You wouldn't dare. I'll tell everyone about Mom's. About Mom's what, Thomas? I interrupted. The terrible secret you've been holding over her head. The one she told me all about. The color drained from his face. 15 years of leverage gone in an instant. He never had anything on Mom. He'd been bluffing the whole time, and now he knew that we knew. You have 1 hour to decide, I said, turning to leave. Oh, and Amelia sends her regards. She's already signed her statement about your creative accounting. That was the final blow. Thomas cracked right there, signing his confession on the hood of his car, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. The family meeting that followed felt like both an ending and a beginning. As he read his confession, the room filled with gasps, tears, and quiet, seething anger. By the end, he looked smaller. No longer the towering figure who controlled us with fear, but just a broken man who built his life on lies. We're selling the properties, but not to Marcus's shell companies. Instead, we found buyers who will actually honor the tenants and the community Mom loved. Every cent Thomas stole will be repaid with interest. Amelia filed for divorce this morning. Ivy's letting her stay as long as she needs. Before leaving, Amelia gave us one last gift, recordings of Thomas and Marcus plotting their next scam made just days before their downfall. We don't need them for legal action anymore, but it's nice to have insurance. As for the childhood home, we're turning it into a community center. Mom would have loved that. Thomas left town yesterday. His parting words, "You've ruined everything I built," I corrected him. "No, I protected everything Mom built, you were just in the way." And then this morning we got one final message from Mom, an email scheduled to arrive exactly a year after her passing. Benjamin, if you're reading this, you've probably already figured everything out. I'm sorry I left this mess for you, but I knew you could handle it. You were always the strongest of us all. You just needed to realize it. Love, Mom. She was right, I just needed to realize it. To everyone who followed this story, thank you. Special thanks to those who helped me unravel the cryptocurrency scheme. You know who you are. And if you're wondering if this is real, sometimes I wonder too. But then I look at the legal documents, the relieved messages from family, the keys to the new community center, and I remember this is real, very real.